Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 35. A story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, but not necessarily in that order. Jean-Luc Godard.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your host, Alex Ferrari. Head over to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to download your free audiobook from Audible. And our show is sponsored today by USC Film School's only online course, Directing the Actor by the legendary Nina Foch. And you can download that at indiefilmhustle.com/USC. Now, today, guys, we have an old friend of mine. He's probably one of my oldest friends. His name is Brant Sersen. Brant's a director. He's been he's won South by Southwest, the Audience Award for his movie Blackballed, and has won a ton of other festivals, as well as directing other feature films at different budget ranges. And he's told me stories over the years about his adventures in the film business. So I thought it would be a wonderful idea to bring him onto the show and have him tell you his stories of what it's really like to win a huge festival like South by Southwest, to win the Audience Award, which is a huge honor, and what really happens to someone after that, what the realities are. You know, it's not like he all of a sudden just got tons of money thrown at him. He went off, made a $100 million movie, and the rest is history, which is what a lot of people think happens when you win big festivals. But he tells you the truth of what really happened to him, his different adventures, and so on. So get ready for a very entertaining conversation with director Brant Cersen. Brant, thank you so much for being on the show, man. We really appreciate you taking the time out. I know you're, very busy, big Hollywood mover and shaker.
Yeah, big time East Coast guy. Yeah.
So, Brant, I wanted to
big time New York indie film scene guy.
Yeah, exactly. So, Brant, I wanted to have you on the show because we've been friends for I just did the math, getting close to 20 years. Jesus,
it's insane.
It's insanity. So
you're so old, Alex.
I know. I'm so old, even though you're 3 months older than me. Anyway, so and I will never let you. I'll never let that go. So I wanted to get you on the show because you've lived a very your experience through the Hollywood system or the filmmaking experience is very unique. And I've been front row center for most of it. If not all of it, actually, because you kept, we kept talking back and forth over the years about what you're doing, and we've had our long sessions of phone calls that we had while you were going through some of these experiences. So I thought it would be really educational to kind of break down a lot of myths and also just explain how you got started, because it's a fascinating story. So I'm going to start by asking you, how did we meet, and how did that whole, unfortunately, how did we meet?
Unfortunately, I went to the University of Miami. No, I was at the University of Miami for their film school, which was a pretty decent film school back in the mid 90s, I guess. Mm-hmm. And, one of the requirements of the film track that I was in is that I had to intern somewhere. So there was a list of places that all of the students were given. And I guess it was called AFI. Is that right?
AFI Filmworks. Yeah.
AFI Filmworks was one of the places on the list. I was working with someone else through AFI, being a gopher. I forget the guy's name, but he had me driving all around Miami doing the war stuff. But I got to see Miami a little bit by doing that. And I basically, after like a couple of weeks of being a gopher for this guy and not really learning anything, I said, I'm out of here. And then he said, well, wait a second. And he introduced me to you, and you were sort of like, I guess you were like the vault guy, maybe?
I was the dubber / vault guy / Mac technician for the entire company. Back in the days when Macs, networked together with Apple Talk cables. Stuff like that.
Right.
So, and you came in, I remember you came in and you're like, can I intern for you, man? Because it seems like you could teach me something. I'm like, yeah, sure. and we hit it off from that point on. And I don't even remember.
Right. I remember he came in just to introduce me to you, and I sat with you for a little bit, and I saw what was going on.
I was editing reels. I was editing.
Yes, I was like, this is where I need to be, not like, picking up detergent and weird stuff at the supermarket for this guy. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah,
which by the way, if you're getting into the film business, you're going to be doing that a lot of times when you first start out. Is going to be a
you
gopher.
Don't have to. If you follow
absolutely,
my track.
Exactly. So I was editing on a 3/4 inch tape on a Sony 3/4 inch from deck to deck, editing demo reels for the commercial direct. It was a commercial house, so we were doing commercial reels there. And then I don't even remember what I taught you. What did you learn?
I think you taught me how to use a 3/4 deck,
right?
Because I didn't, they weren't teaching that in school, like
and betas and stuff like that. I think that we took
betas, everything was, we were doing everything on 16, so we were in that analog world. So we, it was I was learning betas and 3/4 and it was like, whoa, what are these giant tapes? what is this?
Which is like stuff that you needed to learn for at the time, that was the norm. That was like job skills.
That was like the 3/4 tape was like the tape to pass around your reel on.
Right.
And then there was just, all the dubbing machines and all that stuff. It was, I was, I'm not super techie, but I felt I was sitting in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. It was it was pretty awesome, just all the machines and stuff. And I was like, I want to learn all this stuff.
And I think you came in after maybe 3 months, 2 months that I've had the job. There, so it was
really?
Because I interned. I interned for the guy who had the job before for over 3 months, working for free every day, and just kind of busting my butt until finally he left. And they're like, "Well, who's going to take the job?" I'm like, "Oh, give it to Alex. He's been here for the last 3 months," and that's how I got the job. So enough about our dubbing times. Let's get to some serious stuff. So after you left with me, you got a job offer, I guess, at the legendary Propaganda Films.
Yes. So I was I'm from New York. I grew up in a suburb just 30 minutes north of New York City. And when I went home, I ended up getting an internship at Propaganda Films, not knowing, I was going to film school because I wanted to make movies. I think I was still figuring out who I am and what I wanted to do. I have to say my mom was sort of instrumental in pushing me down this road, because she saw early on that I was a big film, loved Star Wars and all those kinds of movies. And I was into special effects. And she's like, you know what, you're going to go to Hollywood and be a special effects guy, so that was my first, that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then, as you get in film school, you learn, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a director. I'm going to be running this stuff. So,
right.
I was a film guy, and I kind of knew someone that was over at Propaganda through someone else. And I went there and I interned for a week during my Christmas vacation, just for a week. And I think that first day I was there interning, the guy that I got an internship for Propaganda's in their vault. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing everything that you taught me. I used those skills, and I brought them to New York, where I excelled in the vault. I was editing on 3/4 decks, back to back, making betas, and but it was for directors like Michael Bay and David Fincher and Anton Fuqua, and then
Spike Jonze and those guys.
Little did I know that they had little smaller companies, Satellite Films, which had Spike Jonze, and then they had Partisan that had Michel Gondry, and all of a sudden I am sitting in this place where it's the biggest directors,
the biggest commercial in the commercial at the time. Now they're the biggest in the film world.
Yeah, I think David Fincher was, I think he was just finishing up with Fight Club when I was there.
Right.
And
he had broken out.
Else,
right.
Yeah. So it was, but anyway, so my first day, they were like, my boss was like, hey, we're going to go to this shoot. One of our directors is shooting a music video for Daft Punk. I'm like, who's Daft Punk? But I'll go, and they're like, oh, it's Spike Jonze. And I'm like, what? So, it was a few blocks away. We walked over and we watched Spike Jonze shoot a Daft Punk video, and then
it's the one we all remember, right? It's like that.
But the dog walking around the East Village. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So and if you look really closely, there's a couple scenes where you see me shopping for fruit in the background, or walking by with a backpack. But I was super excited because Spike Jonze was sort of, when I really knew what I wanted to do, I grew up skateboarding, and unknowingly I've been, I was watching skate videos, and there was one called Mouse and one called Goldfish, and who knew that Spike Jonze made those? And it made sense because these were like the coolest like skate videos. And then, he was, pretty instrumental in, where I am now as far as like getting into this business. Cause, I was just sort of like a skate punk still trying to figure stuff out.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Mm-hmm. And then, watching those videos was like, oh, this is what I want to be doing. And then, so then finding out that Spike Jonze was at Propaganda was just like, I won the lottery. So, now graduates. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so, and I remember because when you got into Propaganda, I was like super excited, and I was like, oh, and I think I visited Propaganda. Yeah, I was in New York doing some work, and I got to take the tour of Propaganda, which was so much fun, like walking around that kind of environment. I'm like, man, you get to work here every day.
Oh yeah,
it was super fun. And then I remember you were always so kind, and you would edit demo reels of David Fincher, Michael Bay, Spike Jonze, Fuqua, all the big direct, and you would mail them to me, unbeknownst on the Propaganda dime, which I appreciate.
Sure.
And I would get these, like, I still have those, by the way. I still have them in my archive somewhere.
Relics.
They're relics.
Great.
And some of the stuff was like, Michael Bay's commercials that no one's ever seen, or David Fincher's early work, or Spike Jonze, like, I think is it Spike
Dinosaur Jr. stuff.
Yeah. Like this crazy stuff that no one will ever see. But I have it on VHS. So it was so cool. And I was learning a lot while you were sending me those. So it was like, it was like having a pipeline into Propaganda, which, if you guys don't understand, Propaganda Films was the largest commercial and music video house in the world for a long time before they finally.
Absolutely.
There was nobody else. Like, there was no one even close because of the staff of people. I mean, Michael Bay, David Fincher, Spike Jonze, Fuqua, Michel Gondry, and the list goes on and on with these amazing directors. So it was a ton of fun. So after that, After that, you did that for a little while, and then you jumped over to Comedy Central, right?
Yes, sort of. So, like, when I was at Propaganda, what I started doing, actually, while I was in college still, I started doing a documentary. And, I sort of discovered music for the first time down there, punk rock. And I started just sort of documenting, like, the scene that was, like, around me down there, because I was so enamored by it. And I loved the music, and I loved the people. And that documentary, I worked on it for a few years while I was at Propaganda, and was interviewing bands and people up and down the East Coast for a couple of years until we finished it. And that was my first film. I think I did a music video before that.
Yes, I edited.
You edited, I
yes.
believe. And
oh God, what was the name of it?
Yes,
we were just talking about
skipping over that fun stuff right there.
Yeah, I forgot about it. It was like a thrash band.
It was a Miami hardcore band called Brethren.
And, yes.
Yeah, we took over a club. I had no idea what I was doing, but
Shout out 16. Yeah.
The cool thing was in college, I was in the production track of film. I switched over into the business track because I felt like what I was learning in the classroom, like, that would take me a semester to learn, I could learn in one day on the set of one of my friend's films. So I switched over into the business track just to see what they were saying about producing and marketing and distribution, because that stuff is so important, in film. And I think it's like, people, they forget that, or they don't realize at the time when they're making a movie how important that part is. Mm-hmm. And it was like in one of those classes where I forget the professor's name, but he said something about finding your niche. And I was, sitting there in the seat, and I'm like, oh my God, I know my niche. And it's like, I go to these shows every weekend and watch these bands play where, like, there's skinheads on one side and then these, like, Cuban hardcore guys on the other, and surfers, and, like, they're fighting outside, but they're, like, total bros inside. And it was just a really unique scene. So I started documenting that and interviewing the bands. And one of the first bands I interviewed was Blink-182 before they were anybody. And then from there, the list grew, and, I worked on it for a couple of years. And then, we played at a film festival, the New York Underground Film Festival, which was started by Todd Phillips. And we had a great screening. It was my first taste of, showing a film in a theater with an audience and having to do a Q&A and, getting razzed like left and right. It was great, but I was hooked after that. So then, after that film, which was called Release, one of the bands, it was a New York hardcore band. They sort of hired me to do their rockumentary. And so I spent a year doing that in between working at Propaganda Films and Comedy Central. So that was great because I interviewed like Rancid and the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and all these big bands at the time. And, and that did great. And these were two, videos that were distributed worldwide through, independent video labels, like the record labels, and they did great.
And you actually made money with them?
I made Release. I made money. The first one for sure. I made paid myself back in a decent, not a lot of money, but for like a 21-year-old, I was happy.
Right.
And then and then the sick of it all was the band. They paid me to do that film.
It's a flat rate.
I ended up probably spending money out of my own pocket because they ended up cutting the budget in half while we were midway through. And I had like an editor and a visual effects guy I was working with, and I didn't want to leave him hanging. And this film was actually important to me. I was like really emotionally invested in it and I wanted to see it done. So I think I just threw an extra couple thousand in there just to like finish it, pay my guys. And then, so during that time I wrote this script, that got a little traction somehow. With a producer in New York who ended up getting, ICM interested and another producer out in LA, and it was called Jimmy the Dragon. Mm-hmm. And it was a comedy about these backyard wrestlers. And, I just came off of these two documentaries, and now I am like on the phone talking to like ICM, this packaging agent, and they're talking about, these $1 million budgets. And it was like, whoa. And they're like, yeah, and we're thinking about Jenny McCarthy, and we want Jenna Jameson for this part because she was all big time at the time. And it was like, what's going on? We started casting in New York, and I couldn't believe what was happening. I'm like 22, 23 years old, and this movie's coming together. Right. And then 9/11 happened, and 9/11 happened, and everything fell apart after that.
Of course.
And so it was just like the brakes were put on, the project died, everyone sort of like retreated back to where they were for a little while. And, one of the things that I learned during this whole thing is, I didn't have anything to fall back on. I put all my eggs in one basket with this one film. And when this project fell apart, I literally had nothing because I was, generating my own ideas and shooting my own stuff. I wasn't in a position where people were going to hire me to direct anything because, I did a couple documentaries on bands, but like, I just wasn't at that place. So that is when I took this job at Comedy Central working in their vault, basically.
I'm responsible for your career is what you're telling me.
I don't forget. Yes. So under your tutelage, I learned how to work this recorder desk. And then
and it snowballed from there. The Oscar.
I graduated to Digibeta.
Of course.
Yeah. So then I got this job at Comedy Central, and after I walked in and I said on day one to myself, I will be here for 3 months tops. That's it. I just need a little cushion, health benefits, just to like keep me, to float me for a little while I get this. Because then I had this idea that came to me like a week before I got the job. And it was like a little movie that I thought of that I was like, I'm going to shoot this movie. I'm going to do it for no money because that's the only way I think I could do it. And, I'm going to just be here, for like no time.
Sure.
And, I think 3 months turned into like 3 years. But regardless, that film was Blackballed, the Bobby Duke story. And that's when, I thought of this idea. I partnered up with a friend of mine who just started to manage some people in New York. And we used to go to comedy shows all the time. And, we spent a lot of time at the UCB Theater back in the early days. And, I told him my idea, and he's like, yeah, let's make this. Let's put some of my guys that I'm going to represent in this thing. And, it's a win-win for both of us. So, I would go down to the theater with him, UCB Theater, and we'd watch. And basically I just sat in the audience and was like, oh, I like this guy, Rob Hubel, for this part. And man, Rob Riggle would be great for this part, and Paul Scheer for this, and John Ross Bowie for here. And John,
you had like this insane cast in Blackballed.
because of my friend Brian Steinberg, he introduced me to this comedy scene in New York that, wasn't really big yet. It was still very small. So yeah, I was up, in the way beginnings when UCB started, and saw all those the pillars of UCB like just getting started. And I kind of put together this mockumentary paintball story, and I figured, coming from documentary, like a nice transition into like narrative filmmaking was like a mockumentary. It felt natural. It felt comfortable for me to try that first. So we were lucky that Rob Corddry signed on to play the lead character, Bobby Dukes, and we filled in the casts with.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
I could go through the lists and know all of them.
Yeah. It's
and
a ton of people.
And so we spent one summer every weekend shooting that movie, and not knowing what we were going to get. I wrote the story. It was like on 20 pages, and the movie was improvised. With dialogue. And we just went out every weekend based, on Rob Corddry's his Daily Show schedule at the time, because I think he just got the gig. Mm-hmm. So he had to put in his time, and he wasn't messing around with it. So he's like, Brant, I'll give you a Saturday and Sunday here. Next week I could give you a Sunday. The following week I'm going to be in Minneapolis covering this, and that's a little, So it took a while to get that movie done, but when it did, and when we started putting it together, we had something special. And I got the producer who set up the Jimmy the Dragon movie to take a look at basically 4-hour rough cut of this film. Mm-hmm. And he was like, okay, we're on board. Like we want in on this movie. And I said, I need you, because I'm not a producer. I was able to pull this thing together, but I need you now. Mm-hmm. And together, we started talking about like, what are we going to do? And we're like, I guess film festivals. I didn't really know much about film festivals other than that New York Underground. And that was sort of like a fluke. So, they submitted, and, I heard of South by Southwest, I didn't know much about it. And there were some other ones I can't even remember. And I got a call, and it was like, Brant, we got a call from South by Southwest. They want the world premiere. And it's like, okay.
And you're like, what's South by Southwest?
Yeah. So then, then it's like, well, let me see what this is all about. And then it's like, oh, incredible. So Blackballed premiered at South by Southwest.
Big audience reaction.
It was one of the best moments. Huge audience. We played in a convention center. It was sold out. I was sitting with Corddry and Shear and Owen Burke and a couple guys from the crew, and Brendan Burke was there. And, we have this He-Man opening sequence that's like, 2-3 minutes long for the credits. And after the credits ended, there was basically a standing ovation. We were like, what is going on? It was people were clapping. Corddry's looking at me like, what's going on? It was the most incredible experience of my life. Like, I mean, the audience in Austin was like incredible. Like everyone laughed at the right places. Every single joke hit. Like everything worked. And then it was the biggest like applause at the end of the movie. The movie ended. We were like on another planet. Corddry runs out of the theater. I always remember this. I'm like, "Where are you going? We have to go do Q&A." He's like, "No, I got to go to the bathroom." So I'm down there and standing in front of like 600 people with Shear and my editor Chris Leckler, who doesn't talk much. And I gotta this is like the biggest group of people I've ever talked to in my life. And I'm like, where's Corddry? Like, this is what he does, Right. And, so they start asking questions, and I'm like, and then Corddry comes running in, he gets a huge applause, and we ended up having a great Q&A. Then we had this after party after the whole thing. And then, you start getting business cards and, hey man, I love your movie. What are you doing next? Can I interview you? I got this site. Hey, I want to talk to you. I got this project, that we think you'd be right for. And you start getting all these people like, just kind of telling you all this stuff. And then, the week goes by, a couple of days go by, and they have the awards ceremony, and we're like, oh, let's go, see what happens. And we ended up winning the Audience Award. Nice. And that was pretty incredible. And then there was a big party after the festival for that. And then the same thing, get all these people, here's my card, here's my card, here's my card.
So So after you win the Audience Award, you're approached by studios, producers, agents, all that kind of stuff, right?
No studios, producers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Any
maybe
agents?
I'm wrong, but I don't. No agents. Not one. Oh no, sorry. Yes, one agent, contacted me.
From what agency?
And he had his own agency.
Oh, he had his
own. We shared
agency.
the same name. It was like.
So
we had the same name. I have an unusual name, but I think his name was Brant. That's all I remember.
Okay.
So yeah, I just won the Audience Award. I guess it was getting big. I don't know if studios were like,
looking at
they're
it.
shopping.
Right.
I don't know if it was maybe a little too early. Maybe like some of the bigger films. Now let me remind you, my cast, they were
nobodies
besides Rob Corddry.
Right.
They were nobodies. No one knew who they were.
Right.
And we shot this film on the Panasonic, I think it was the DVX 100 when they first introduced 24p.
Okay. Not even the 100A, the 100.
The 100. Yeah, not the 100A, the 100. So and my two camera operators, they were just like, one of them was like a guy I worked with at Comedy Central, and then another guy was just like a friend of a friend. So it was like, yeah, push this red button, because so
from that,
look great,
well, it's a mockumentary, so you can get away with it.
And you can get away with it, but like it didn't look. It looked like an indie. You know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
It just looked. Yeah. But to go back to what you're saying, I was approached by a couple producers, mostly like journalists, but no big agents or studios.
So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, a lot of people think you win a festival like South by Southwest or Sundance or Toronto or any of these big festivals, and all of a sudden you have a golden ticket. They write you a check and they go, come this way. Here's your next $20 million movie, and so on, which is the myth. It's the Cinderella story that we've all been told. But the reality is that it's not true. At this point, you've gotten some traction, you've gotten some attention, and now the real work starts for you as you continue to try to build your career after this. Did it open open some doors for you, right?
It kind of did,
But you went to a lot of other festivals after this. I remember you telling me the Hawaii festival was really cool.
When you win a festival like that was Splinterheads. But when you win a film festival, what generally happens is like a big festival like South by Southwest, you will be invited to play at other festivals. They waive the cost. They don't even they just want your movie to play at the festival because you just won South by Southwest. So obviously there's a reason to program it. So we played, we played so many festivals for maybe like the next year after South by Southwest, and we won a bunch. We played up in Boston, we played AFI, we played all over the country, everywhere, and we won a bunch of awards. And it was a real festival goers loved the movie. And after maybe 6 months, it's like, all right, we're going to Atlanta now we're going to New Orleans, and now we're going down to Sarasota, and now we're going to fly back up to Woodstock, and we're going here. But the one call that wasn't coming was a distributor. I
was going to ask you, do you mind me asking you what the budget was on this?
We shot we shot Blackballed for, all said and done, maybe $50,000.
Okay. So at this point, no one's made any money yet.
No one's made any money yet. And no, because we haven't made one. No, there hasn't been even a talk about a sale. Okay. So, my producers were working on it, and I guess the feedback that he was getting was that you don't have anyone famous in your cast. You have a studio vibe movie with an indie look. And the distributors, and there were a couple of distributors, I should take that back. There were some distributors that the producers were talking to. They didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to market it. They just didn't know what to do. And that's basically it. It was easy as that. You don't have any famous people. It looks too indie. We don't know what to do with this thing. We're moving on. And that's what happened. Even though we,
won a ton of
garnered
awards.
all those awards,
right.
And they were audience awards too. So it did great with the people. But studios didn't see it making any money, and they passed.
So how did you finally get this thing distributed?
So what we ended up doing is, and we did get some straight to DVD deals that were horrible. You know, it's basically like, give us your movie for free. Right. And if you ever see money, good luck, you know? Right. But we decided, let's like hold on tight. We know we have something special, and we self-distributed. And, you know, no one was really doing that back then, but we sort of had like a niche audience. We had the paintball audience. Right. That was like, and paintball at the time, like you could walk into a Barnes & Noble and there would be 5 or 6 paintball magazines on the shelf. So, you know, paintball is actually big, you know? So we were like, all right, we have the paintball audience, and we sort of like a comedy audience, because we have these, you know, these comedy guys that were actually within that year of after premiering South by, some of them started getting traction. Like Jack McBrayer got on 30 Rock, and all of a sudden he was famous. And Rob Corddry was like, "Oh, we should just put Jack's face on the cover of the DVD, and then we'll sell them." You know, you know. So we did a 12-city theatrical release in small theaters.
You four-walled it.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. Okay.
And we hired a bunch of like interns and people to work with us, and we sat in an office and we made calls to like, or we got on message boards and like local comedy groups in the towns that we were playing. We got in touch with paintball fields, and we just set up, you know, we just did it that way. And we played theaters, and wow, you know, we did 12 cities total. Actually New York played, I think, for like 2 weeks. At the Two Boots Pioneer Theater when it was still around, and that was great. And then after that, we Shout Factory, a big you know, DVD distributor, they wanted to do like some big unique deal with us, and it was money to pay back all of our investors and for everyone to get paid a little bit. And we took that deal, and they made like a big deal with Best Buy, and you know, and it, you know, financially, everyone got their money back, which I was happy about, the investors, and everyone made a little bit of money. But then basically that was the end of that run with that movie. Like that, it ended up like on DVD, you know.
And Netflix, I remember Netflix then eventually.
Then Netflix definitely picked it up. And, you know, and as these guys in the film have just gotten so famous now, Netflix just keeps picking it up, and they pay each year or each quarter or whatever, the price goes up a little more, which has been amazing.
Because now there's so much traction on the stars. They're huge stars.
Oh yeah. You type in Hot Tub Time Machine, you know, for Rob Corddry, and then you may see a little picture of, you may also like Blackballed, you know, so,
right. So it gets a lot of play.
So, so, I mean, Blackballed as a, to me, I mean, that was my one of the best movie making experiences of my life. And, you know, it's been a great calling card for me. And, you know, it sort of became this like cult phenomenon. I take meetings and people find out, you did Blackballed. That was like my favorite movie. And, you know, I hear stories how the Patriots were watching Blackballed on their tour, like on their bus to different games. Like I've heard the craziest stories about this movie.
That's so awesome, man.
And you can still search Twitter, and and people are just discovering it, and it still holds up. You know, it just you know, I had a great cast.
Yeah, so. And I'm going to put the trailer to all your films on the show notes. And I just actually, before we start talking, I'm like, let me refresh my memory. And I watched the trailer to the Blackballed, and I'm like, that's funny as hell. It was cool to see Rob. I mean, Rob Corddry was so young. I mean, he was 20 years ago almost. Well, no, not 20, 15 years ago or something like that when you did it. But it was just fun to see all these guys like super young, but they were still them. Like they have their timing and their everything was there. So I was always not only proud of you for doing that, you know, but I was so happy that you were, you know, seeing a friend of mine kind of get their stuff off the ground and then get traction and then win a big like you're the first friend of mine that won a huge festival and that got a movie released and everything of all the people, all my, you know, filmmaker friends. So it was always like, man, that's so much fun. And then starts the whole journey of what happens after. Like, okay, so between Blackballed and your movie Splinterheads, there's a gap of about 4 years, right? 4 or 5 years, right?
Let's see, Blackballed, we played South by Southwest 2004. We premiered Splinterheads 2009. So 5 years.
About 5 years. So what were you doing?
5 years, between premieres. But
Right.
yeah. So I stayed at Comedy Central. I was still at Comedy. Comedy Central at the time wasn't owned by MTV, which was great, and they gave me a leave of absence to go and edit Blackballed. Okay. After we finished Blackballed, I went back to work at Comedy Central because I still needed to, pay the bills.
Right.
So I stayed Blackballed. We went through the whole thing. I went on all the film festivals. I did that for a while, and I was working on my other script, Splinterheads, while touring with Blackballed and working at Comedy Central. And that one was going to be another indie film, and I was working with the same producer that I did Blackballed with, and he was putting together the financing. He actually was able to pull the financing together because of Blackballed. So as soon as Splinterheads got all the financing together, I gave my notice to Comedy, and I never looked back.
Good for you.
I stepped into the scary world of being a freelance director,
which we could talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah. Then Splinterheads came.
So Brant, how did you get Splinterheads off the ground?
My producer Darren Goldberg and Chris Marsh, they took the script. They were doing some other films that were doing fairly well in the film festival circuit, and I think they had a couple small sales. So they actually had some investors that were looking to get into comedy, and we were able to pull together. We pulled together all independent financing for that movie, and that's how we got that one off the ground.
That was a fairly larger budget than 50,000.
Oh yeah, that one was just over $1 million.
Okay,
but for me was
Wait a minute, that film was just like a little bit over $1 million.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks awesome. I honestly thought it was like a $5 million.
No, well, Alex, we were one of the first movies to shoot on the Red.
Oh, and you had a good DP.
Yeah, we were, and we had a great DP, and we were featured heavily on the Red website.
I remember that.
One of the first movies.
That's right.
Yeah. That movie sort of like that agents. Okay, so what ends up happening is that movie. So I write Splinterheads, and then we're casting, and then we get all of our covering agents at all the agencies, and everyone at all the agencies love it. They we're getting some crazy names thrown around, and so I get Rachel Taylor, who signs on, and some of these other names were, I don't want to say, it's a lot of names were being thrown out, and
all right, start it up again.
I'm trying to figure out how to answer this question of how this got off the ground.
Working from a micro budget movie like Blackballed to go into an over $1 million movie like Splinterheads, what was the experience like working? Because I know you told me it was a very difficult shoot for yourself. Can you elaborate a little bit more about why it was a difficult shoot and what was the experience with working on a larger budget? And obviously, since it was a larger budget, you must have had less control, because Blackballed, you had complete control and you could do whatever you wanted because it was you. This was a little bit different.
Pretty much, yeah. Can
you explain to the audience a little bit about what your experience was like working on your and it's also your first thing right off of Blackballed as well. So
right,
you're still green. You're still wet behind the ears in a lot of ways.
Yes. Especially, yeah. Okay. Well, I think in essence, they're exactly the same, a small film and a big film. It's just more people. And as far as the day, everything is exactly the same. The casting, the way we went about everything was the same. It's just on a bigger scale. And I guess the big thing is you have more cooks in the kitchen, and there's a lot of levels that you have to get through to get approvals for certain things.
You mean politics?
This producer needs to sign off on this person. Yeah, politics. Then investors. This particular movie had one very large investor that financed a big chunk of it, and part of, I guess, the deal that was set up with him was, they had to sort of sign off on certain people. And that was difficult for me because they were saying no to people that I liked. And so that was a very difficult thing for me, because I felt like I was losing control over my vision a little bit, and my vision was being taken over by other people that weren't getting it. Mm-hmm. And so that was where the frustrations began and continued through, because I was right, basically. I also learned,
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Certain battles, you got to just really pick your battles with certain things. And I think I was picking some of the wrong ones. And, those were like some frustrations with this. I was able to, in the end though, I put up a huge fight about our lead actor, who ultimately went to Thomas Middleditch. There were some pretty big names that were circling the role, mm-hmm. and I wasn't feeling them. And I saw Thomas Middleditch at this little comedy club, and he was brilliant. And I saw him and I knew right away that was the lead of my movie. And I need to somehow I have to persuade everyone. I got to do hypnosis. I got to figure something out to get these guys to like sign off on this guy. And I dragged everyone to a comedy show that he was playing. He had no idea this was happening, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I filled the audience with we had 5 producers, a couple investors. We're all sitting there, and he was brilliant. Thank God. And, we had him audition, and that was like the one thing that I'm like most proud of, is that I was able to get Thomas Middleditch, in that role.
And now he's the star of Silicon Valley, right?
And then he just so happens to go on to Silicon Valley, right? Yeah, I guess.
But what do you know?
I pick him, Alex.
What do you know?
What do I know?
What do you know? So that film goes on, and obviously at a bigger budget gets distribution, and you also premiered it at South by Southwest, and you did a bunch of other stuff with that film, correct?
Yeah. So Splinterheads was a fantastic shoot. I was shooting on a Red camera. It was incredible. I had playback on a movie, which I didn't even know what that was. That it was pretty amazing getting some of the gourmet, like the tools, mm-hmm. I got to say, mm-hmm. That's amazing.
On a $1 million budget. It's not like you just went onto a Marvel set for $200 million. This is $1 million budget.
Yeah, no, but for me,
of course, no, exactly.
That was like, whoa, I have a giant monitor, that I could see everything, and we could rewind it and look at stuff. It was incredible.
Right.
So we finished up Splinterheads, and we were asked to come and premiere at South by Southwest, and so we premiered there, and then went on and did the festival circuit. We picked up a couple awards at different festivals, and then unfortunately, that movie looked like a studio movie. I think it was a decent rom-com. It definitely has its faults and areas, but not too shabby. But then the recession hit, and I don't think that year, 2009, I think there were like a handful of sales at Sundance that year, and I think none at South by Southwest. So it was just a horrible year for any filmmaker that premiered a movie, I think.
Right.
And that's what I remember. So we had a digital deal, we had a DVD deal, we did all those ancillary distribution deals, and a couple small little international things in the end.
Right, exactly. And did the movie finally make its money back?
No.
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
It has not.
Okay. And it's just, it was bad timing. But so let me so let me ask you a question. How was it working with Marty McFly's mom?
Leah Thompson was fantastic. No, she was great. And that was, I learned a lot actually from her. Obviously, she's been on a million sets. She was in one of my favorite movies of all time, Red Dawn, mm-hmm. The original. Howard the Duck, she was sharing the craziest stories about stuff. But yeah, she was like a real pro, and like, all right, kids, get back, come here, we're going to do another take. Like, she was,
she was mama hand.
She was mama on the set for sure. But she was amazing. And she was like really such a hard worker, and, it was a great collaboration with her.
Awesome.
for sure.
Awesome. So then you go from Splinterheads, which was a rough experience for you creatively, and then you go back to your micro budget roots with Sanctorum. And I remember when you called me about Sanctorum, you're like, "Yeah, I'm just going to go off and do this horror movie," and I'm like, okay, I'm interested to see how it goes. So tell me a little bit about how that got. Did you go back to the whole model of Blackballed in a sense, but just did it with a horror movie?
Sort of. So yeah. So the Sanatorium was kind of like a reaction to Splinterheads. I was really, I guess, in the dumps after Splinterheads. Like I worked so hard in that movie, and like what's up on the screen was not like my vision, and it was like really depressing. And I was just thinking, if this is the way it's going to be, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. And so like, I went through like, there was like a little moment there where
I remember
I just didn't know what I was going to do. Like, what am I going to do with my life right now? Because I don't like this. And my director of photography on Splinterheads was this guy named Michael Simmons. And Michael Simmons, after Splinterheads, I think basically went on and shot Paranormal Activity 2. And it was after coming off of Paranormal 2, we became good friends. He said, "Brant, we should do a horror movie." And I was working with Chris Gethard on this like comedy horror thing. We were like kind of writing something. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, that would be fun. I think I never really played in that genre before, but my comedy stems from like practical jokes. Like practical jokes are what make me laugh the most. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I just saw some sort of parallel with like horror and practical jokes, and like, can I trick the audience? Can I scare because I love scaring people. Like, and I have stupid videos of me scaring people. I have like a whole like,
right.
mixtape of that stuff. But I just thought, I want to try this. So, Chris Gethard got some other gig, and I took this idea that we were working on, which was I took my part of it back basically, and I teamed up with Mike Simmons, and he said, "Okay, if we're going to do this though, we have to do it for like $5,000. And I'm like, "You're crazy." And he's like, No, we got to do this thing as cheap as possible. So I said, "Perfect. I'm comfortable doing that. Let's do this." So I had the story already put together, and I went out. I basically followed the blueprint of how I put together Blackballed. I visited the same UCB theater that, I spent a lot of time at. I wanted to cast people that knew each other outside of comedy, or just they were friends. I wanted, I wanted to get that chemistry right. So I put that movie together. We shot it for a little more than $5,000, but not much more. And we just went into this one location, and we shot this movie in the dead of winter.
Yeah, I saw the trailer. But wait a minute. Yeah. So how did you get that location's awesome? How did you get that location? Because that's basically your money.
Well, the one thing that everyone really needs to do in this business is relationships, and keep relationships. And the good thing is I guess I'm good at that. Like I become friends with most people that I work with, from if they were PA to location scout to a casting person. I always treat everyone with the most respect. I admire what every position on every set does. And, because I PA'd for a very short time, and I was treated like I hated the way I felt being a PA, how some of these production managers were treating me. And I said, from that point, I would never treat anyone like that. I would never let anyone treat anyone like that on my sets if I could control that. Mm-hmm. So, I think because of that, like, I've just fostered these relationships over the years with key people in different departments. So, when we needed an abandoned hospital, I called the location scout that I knew from Splinterheads, and I was like, "Hey, Tom, I'm doing this little tiny movie. I'm looking for this thing." And he was like, "Yeah, man. Let me do this with you. I'm down. Let's do it." And it was easy as that. And, we drove around all the different boroughs in New York City and outside of the city until we found this one place, just about 45 minutes north of New York City. And yeah, that was our location.
And I have to ask, like, did they charge you? Because I know when I did Broken, my whole movie was based around this one hospital, which was not an abandoned hospital. It was an actually functioning tuberculosis hospital on the floors 3, 4, and 5, but floors 2, 1, and the basement were abandoned, and that's why I got that cool look. And they originally were going to charge me like $500, but at the end of the whole week and a half that I was there, they were just like, no, just don't pay us. It's fine. So out of that $5,000 budget, I'm just trying to break it down. Like, did it cost anything? A little bit? You don't have to say numbers, but just did it cost anything?
No. It costs. Yeah, it cost something. It cost, I think, same thing, $500. I think it was like.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
I mean, it's always great when you go to a place where films are not shot,
right?
Because people they love it. They love the excitement. So there were all these abandoned buildings. There were over 50 abandoned buildings on this property, and 3 of them were like in use for different reasons. And there was someone from the town had their offices there, and this woman's like, "Yeah, you could do it. This will be fun. It'll give me something to do, if you guys are here."
Right.
So. She's like, I don't know, how long are you going to be here? We're like, 3 weeks. She's like, oh, okay, $500 sound good? We're like, deal, because we were looking at places that wanted to charge us $10,000 a day.
Of course.
Which was, closer to the city. So we had full reign they gave us, there were 3 safe buildings that didn't have asbestos in them that we were able to go in.
Right.
But we had full reign. Yeah. And, that's how that happened.
That's a pretty creepy movie. I mean, did you guys get creeped out in that movie? In that set?
Yeah. Look, we were there. We were 3 weeks. We spent most nights in there. Ghost Adventures, the ghost hunting show, actually did an episode in one of the buildings that we used. 6 months after we shot, and they picked up some pretty crazy stuff during that show. Lots of.
A lot of crazy
stuff. So yeah, who knows? We definitely heard some things, but I think, I don't know.
Now, did you?
Nothing crazy.
Now, did you jump? Did you jump genres because from comedy to horror to kind of prove that you can kind of do that and not pigeonhole yourself into comedy?
No, there's only so much you could do with the camera with comedy. Because I did some commercials and stuff too. In between films and stuff, other comedy stuff. I just found I was just, you put you set up your wide, your medium, your close, and you're kind of just providing a stage, for your comedians to perform on. And I want to explore with something more visual, because when I first got into the business, I wanted to do music videos and commercials. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of Fincher and Spike Jonze. And I felt like the stuff that I was doing, I wasn't allowed to do that stuff. You don't really see many stylized comedies, Rarely. You don't see many of them. You rarely do. And I don't know. I never wanted to just be the comedy guy. I don't know how I fell into comedy, honestly, but I wanted to explore other genres, and and I'm not the biggest, I don't like blood and guts, I'll pass out with that stuff, but I love scaring people. And I felt I don't know, I just saw a parallel between, when you're setting up a scene to do a scare, it was very similar to how you were setting up a joke. I don't know. I just found something that felt familiar, but felt very different. And shooting Sanatorium, it was a found footage. We shot this thing, honestly, before the wave of found footage movies, filled, your Netflix queue. It just took us a while to finish the movie because everyone was working for free. So my editor was working for free. Everyone had points, and that's how we did it. But his schedule was nuts. So it took us almost 2 years to finish that movie. And within that 2 years, a billion found footage movies came out. And you'll see some criticism of my movie, oh, this is Grave Encounters. Oh, they're copying Grave Encounters. And I want to just be yeah, buddy, we shot this way before Grave Encounters. We just couldn't get it out. And,
Got it.
And also Lionsgate and ultimately bought the film. We had, for whatever reason, we had a little bidding war between Lionsgate and this other company, and Lionsgate got it. And but then they held on to it for a year. Oh. And then we watched more of the same type of movie come out, and it's oh my God, release the freaking movie already, And then they finally did. And, it seems to get positive reviews, but I'll tell you what, Alex, that was like the best thing that ever happened to me, because like I'm back now, like that movie brought me back.
No, I did. I actually just saw an interview the other day with Guillermo del Toro, and he was talking about. It's funny that I see a kind of a pattern with filmmakers that they'll have their first movie that they do, which they have complete control of. It's awesome. People go crazy for it, and they love it, and then they get offered a bigger movie, which they have a horrible time on because they have no control of. And with Guillermo del Toro, it was Mimic. Mimic was the first studio movie he did after Chronos. And Harvey Weinstein just beat the hell out of him to the point where he almost like after Mimic, he was like you. He's like, I don't want to know, how am I going to do that? He was completely destroyed. And he realized that he needed to go back to what he knew. So he did Devil's Backbone. But the funny thing is, he was offered Blade 2 before Devil's Backbone, and he literally said no to New Line and said, look, if you want me, you'll wait for me, because he said that he had to get his creative juices back. Like as an artist, as a human being, he was destroyed. His soul, he said, his artistic soul had been destroyed through the process of Mimic. And I know a lot of that was happened to you now with Splinterheads. So Sanctorum was kind of like that kind of response to that. And then his was Devil's Backbone. And then after Devil's Backbone, he went right into Blade 2. But at that point, he's like, I would have never been able to make Blade 2. Like without that. Right. So, which brings us into your next project. Can you tell us a little bit about your latest project you're working on?
Yeah, I could tell you a little bit. Yeah. So, it only took 20 years, but I got my first, I guess they call it, open directing assignment. After doing Sanatorium, I got new agents and a new manager, and there's been like a little shift in focus for what I want to do and what they want to see me do. I was presented this one project who was looking for a writer/director, and I went up against a bunch of dudes, a bunch of other directors, and I guess they liked my ideas, and I went through 3 rounds of basically pitching, interviewing, wooing, trying to convince them that my ideas are great. Mm-hmm. I got the phone call. It was like it was kind of like an amazing moment. Actually, I was like, just got home, and I walked in the door. I see this Beverly Hills phone number, and I pick it up, and it's the producers, and they're like, "Hey, Brant, we'd love for you to come aboard and direct this movie." And it was like, oh my God, because I really like the project. The people involved are incredible, and but yeah, an amazing moment. So yeah, it's a horror film. Mm-hmm. It's sort of in the vein of, I guess you could call it a Project X meets Paranormal Activity. And, we're casting now, and we're going to probably go into pre-production in a few weeks.
And then this is it's not a studio film, but it's a fairly large budget film.
This will be my biggest budget film ever. And, I have some pretty big players. I could just tell you 2 of my executive producers are Michael Lynn and Bob Shea. And
the Bob Shea.
So yeah, they're they did this little franchise called Lord of the Rings. I don't know if you heard of it, but yeah.
For everybody who doesn't know who Bob Shea is, Google him. But he basically used to run New Line Cinema.
Bob Shea, and they both did. And but those guys, they've produced 500 something movies together. And I think right before they sold New Line, Lord of the Rings was their last film. So
good way to go out.
Yeah, nice way to go out. So now they've started up this new company called Unique Pictures, and they're in the old New Line offices. And this will be one of their first movies that they make under this banner. So
that's huge,
it's been pretty amazing. That's with these guys. Yeah.
So it took you 20 years to be an overnight success, is what you're telling me?
Total overnight success. The lesson is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. If you're passionate about filmmaking, just keep doing it. Don't ever stop. You're going to be depressed. You're going to go through so many emotional stages, but you just got to keep pushing forward, and know that no one is ever going to help you. The only person that will help you is yourself. And, really stick to your gut and listen to your gut. And, if you don't like an actor for a role, just say no. That's basically, right. I wish I said no, but I had to say yes, but I wish I said no and
don't be afraid to say no. It's a lot of filmmakers who, when they're giving an opportunity, they just kind of become yes men because they don't want to lose their opportunity to be on a movie set or to direct a feature or anything like that. And a lot of times they just will keep saying yes because that's it. But the thing is that the directors who make it are the ones who have a vision, who are the ones who do have a strong personality, like the Guillermo del Toros of the world and the David Finchers of the world, and those guys that just say, no, this is not the way it's supposed to be. And I think you learned that the hard way.
I learned it the hard way. I wish I said no a lot more times during Splinterheads. It probably wouldn't. I would have been more satisfied with the film then. But yeah.
So last question, and this is a very difficult question. I ask all of my guests. What is your top 3 films of all time?
Oh God.
Choose. No specific order. Just go ahead. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
2, I could tell you 2 off the bat. There's a movie, La Haine. There's a movie, Once Were Warriors.
Oh yeah, Once Were Warriors is good.
And oh man, the third one. That's a tough one, man. I don't know. It's like, do you say like, I don't know.
Just pick one that tickles your fancy, man. It's not you're not getting an award after this. Don't worry.
I mean, to throw not to sound film snobby or anything. There's this one documentary that really like influenced me a lot. It was American Movie.
Oh, I remember American Movie. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense after seeing Blackballed and that American Movie. Yeah,
that was like a. Though you know what? It's kind of funny now. After saying those 3 movies were like big game changers for me. They really changed the way that I looked at cinema. And I Pulp Fiction sort of took over the spotlight of Once Were Warriors when it came out. But when I was down in Miami, we got a free pass to see this movie, and I went to see it, and I sat there with my mouth open the whole time, like
New Zealand.
Whoa.
It's a New Zealand film.
Yeah, incredible. La Haine was another one that was just incredible, and American Movie was those 3 movies sort of like shaped me. That's weird. Just thanks, Alex. You just does some therapy. You just just figure some stuff out. Yeah.
So any other final words of advice to young or just new independent filmmakers trying to get their stuff off the ground? Yeah,
don't like I said, don't give up, but relationships are key in this business. And if you don't have the relationships, it's going to be hard to get far because you can't do it all by yourself. It's such a collaborative art, field that, just foster those relationships, keep them and don't ever, give up on, your dream or your idea and say no every once in a while.
Brant, man, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to the Indie Film Tribe, Indie Film Hustle Tribe. I really appreciate it. It was great catching up with you, man.
Thanks, Alex.
It's always nice to hear other filmmakers' journeys to kind of see what other people are going through so you don't feel so alone in this crazy journey of being an artist and a filmmaker. And especially when you're hearing it from an old friend. It was wonderful talking to Brant, and I wish him nothing but the best. And if you can, definitely check out in the show notes the trailer for Bobby Duke's or Blackballed, the Bobby Duke story, as well as Splinterheads and Sanatorium. And you can check out the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/035. And don't forget to head over to filmmakingpodcast.com to leave us an honest review. It really helps the show out a lot. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys got a bunch of information out of that and at least got inspired to go off and tell your own story. So keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.